Here's a really fun data map. This is just where I spend a lot of time. And let me explain to you what's going on here. 2 things. Well, at least, 20 things, but let me keep it simple. So along this axis is how important these things are to connecting people to place. So the higher you go up here, the more important it is. And you see your top up here, so that sort of makes sense. So the higher you go up here, the more important it is. That's great. But you also need to know how you're doing on that, because it's not useful, really. Again, everything about this is actionable. We want to use this information. So how are we doing? And this line across the horizontal axis sort of looks at performance, how people are saying you're doing. Now, let me be really clear about this. People are not saying, this is not how the questions are asked. People are not asked, what is the thing that ties you here? They're not asked that. What people are asked about is their loyalty and passion for place and those things that I talked about. And then they're asked to rate social offerings and aesthetics and things like that. And then the data, through the analysis, creates this picture. So in that sense, it's even a cleaner look. We're not letting people's own perceptions of what they think is driving them here and keeping them here get in the way of what's actually doing it. So it's important to notice that. And then we have 2 years of data here. Next year, this chart's going to just be obnoxious because we'll have 3 years. But for now, we have 2 years. And I want to show you a few things. So you got your make sure I don't lose my mic. You have your social offerings, which is the #1 thing tying people to this area right now. And again, we're going to talk about what each of these are, but this has to do with entertainment infrastructure, the shared experience that people have here that means so much to them. That's followed very closely behind by aesthetics. I mean, these things are pretty much a statistical dead heat, but social offerings won out just a little bit. And then #3 is welcomeness, openness. And usually we stick to the top 3 for a couple of reasons. Usually after 3, there's this big statistical jump between the rest. Not really so here in this area, so I am going to talk a little bit about these 2 things, but usually 3 is about what people can handle, and that's where you really should be investing the lion's share of your time. But education is also something. It's #4. It's a little, it's a little bit down from the top 3. And then, of course, basic services, which might be surprising to folks that people, how well the community infrastructure works. Housing, healthcare, highways, it does matter into how people feel about their community. So a couple other things I want to point out to you. #1 is, well, let's look at social offerings. So last year, you were here. See that little grayed out diamond is social offerings. So you were able to not only get people to improve their perceptions of social offerings in this community, it started mattering more. Look at your aesthetics. It was always a strength. And that's the other thing about social offerings. You actually cross the bridge there, which is not easy. So you cross the bridge into that being a strength. Aesthetics, it was always a strength, but it became more important and people found it to be even better here. This is something I'd pay attention to. Here's where openness was last year. It starts mattering a lot more this year, but people are saying, and we're doing a little bit better at it. Now I'm going to talk about what specifically people are talking about here. Now this is where I need to say something because people have a heart attack when they see this. Because if you know how to read this chart, what this is saying to you is these things don't matter to attaching people to place. And a lot of people don't. They say, oh, we've invested in social capital and we've invested in civic engagement, and oh my God, they don't matter. They do matter. Let me explain this to you. Because my background, as Meredith said, is in social capital and civic engagement. I'm not worried about this, so I hope that you will not be either. These things, your ability to get involved in your community, to have friends in your community, to spend time with neighbors is more about who you are than where you live. If the solution to civic engagement was that everybody had to move to Bradenton and Sarasota and Venice, y'all would have a whole new kind of problem. Probably one you wouldn't want. So it's not saying that these things don't matter. As a matter of fact, people are reporting high levels of this here. What this is saying is that it's not, when I decided to come here or when I decided to stay here, I didn't run to the volunteer center and see how it was looking to decide if I wanted to be here or not. I didn't sit around and think, well, gosh, can I make friends here? Do I like my name? That wasn't the things that people were thinking about. This is more about who you are than where you live. And what it brings home is the idea that these things, especially this, is important to engender in people early and often because they will take those behaviors with them wherever they go. And communities desperately need this. The Bradenton MSA is not an outlier here. Everybody, this is where this shows up. This isn't you guys. This is everywhere. So it's important to engender a value of involvement because they'll take that with them, and let's be unselfish and want to encourage that. But the good news here is the point of this data is how you get to keep them here, so we can be selfish after all. Because once we engender this here, that they'll be exhibiting it here, obviously. Obviously. So please, this data is not telling you not to invest in civic engagement, that civic engagement doesn't matter, that social capital, people can stay isolated and no one cares. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that it's just not about where you live. It's about who you are. And so even more so, we need to encourage that in folks.